Most people hate talking about retirement investments. But this goes even farther once you realize that the very companies you're asking to make you more and more money for your retirement that are in your 401k are the very Bayers and Monsantos of the world that you are fighting against, every day of your life. So, how do you plan for your future while still staying true to your principles? Today's guest heretic is Tom Nowak. He's the author of Low-Fee Socially Responsible Investing, and he's going to give us some very specific information about investing on your terms. He's going to tell us how to find companies that support our worldview and do it even on a modest budget. Coming up next on the Nutrition Heretic Podcast.
So I'm sure you've heard that as you age, it gets harder to lose weight. Well, that's total bullshit because my friends Laura and Veronica Chows, they can prove it. They're a mother-daughter duo, and they've lost 125 pounds between the two of them at ages 50 and 20. And they've kept it off for over 2 years without starvation, deprivation, or hunger. So now you can learn their system and a whole lot more with a free 10-day trial to their online membership. They'll give you the diet, the recipes, classes, and more. Sign up today at nutritionheretic.com/utmost-diet.
Fat is bad for you.
I just pop a pill and I'm fine.
Meat is murder.
It's time for bad food punishment. It's time for real nourishment. It's time for the Nutrition Heretic.
The following program is provided as information only and may not be construed as medical or health advice. It is not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any disease. No action or inaction should be taken solely on the basis of the information provided here. Please consult with a licensed healthcare professional or doctor on any matter relating to your health and well-being.
Aloha and welcome to the Nutrition Heretic Podcast. This is Adrienne Hugh, the Nutrition Heretic. So, about 12 years ago, my husband and I attend a meeting of the Weston A. Price Foundation. And we had a conundrum because one of the speakers gets up and, we think we're in the clear. We think we're doing the right thing. We're, talking to farmers about, what kind of work they do and, trying to support them with our dollars. And one of the speakers gets up and says, yes, and, so many people in this audience, they're investing in Monsanto through their investments and, Big Pharma and all of these companies that they wouldn't under normal circumstances support, but their investment portfolios are just cycling these guys through and they never have any idea. And then my husband and I looked at each other and, kind of we're hoping nobody was looking at us because we were shrinking in our chairs thinking, oh God, how do we get out of this? And this is actually a question, that I've, attempted to do, admittedly, some pretty lame research on, but nonetheless, it comes up, right? We're all trying to do the right thing. We're trying to do socially responsible things that match up with our worldview, and it's tough. When I talk to my regular financial advisor, he's like, oh, well, you can't really control what goes in, what goes out. And then when I talk about socially responsible investing, he's thinking more on the side, and this is not necessarily bad, but on the side of how the workers are treated and that sort of thing, like, who gets how much vacation time and that kind of socially responsible, who's getting paid time off for their families, when they have a new baby or something like that. But for me, clearly, I'm looking at a few different levels, right? And I'm sure many of you are too. You're not just looking at how the company is treating the workers, but you're also concerned about the future of our planet. And you don't necessarily want to put your money into a company that is known for destroying the oceans, let's say. So that brings me to our guest heretic, Tom Nowak. He is the author of Low-Fee Socially Responsible Investing. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Well, thank you. Nice to be here on your show, and aloha.
Yeah, well, you're having a little bit of aloha there in Chicago today because it's unseasonably warm.
Yes, yesterday particularly was nice being out in the sunshine. I've been out to your neck of the woods a couple times, maybe 2 or 3 times, and really could enjoy that. But there's something to be said about various seasons as well. So we enjoy this area as well.
I'm actually wearing a wool poncho right now because it's really cold in my house. I live up country in the mountains. So.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So yeah, it's pretty darn cold. We live in an area that kind of looks like Switzerland. It's just grass and cows wherever you look. In any case, socially responsible investing. So you're a certified financial planner. Is that what you're acting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I've been a financial planner for about a dozen years.
Mm-hmm.
And the first few years, I felt about socially responsible investing kind of like some of the folks that I think you probably were talking to, where, I look at it this way, or maybe the fees are too high, or it's not diversified enough. There were a lot of myths out there, and I got curious. And we can go into that, why I got curious, but I got curious one day, and I was a scientist in my first career, so I like understanding why things are the way they are,
right,
and break it down to core levels. And I found that those are all myths, that you can invest according to your worldview. It just takes a little extra effort. And for some folks, a lot of extra effort. I had the benefit of being an investment advisor, so I had a little bit of a head start. But it's more popular than most people realize.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and is this the same, or can it be the same as what people might call green investing?
Yes, there are a whole bunch of different flavors. It's just like an ice cream shop. Some folks will say, I'd like everything except alcohol stocks, or I'd like everything except tobacco stocks, everything except weapons, or big ag, big pharma. So you start excluding things, so you just have the ingredients, that you find acceptable. So that's one way. And green investing is kind of often on the proactive side, is that I definitely want some of very proactive companies that are say the companies that have 90% of their corporate headquarters with solar energy or wind energy, that type of thing. So there's different, there's positive screens and negative screens.
Right.
So there's a lot of different flavors.
Right. So then, like when I talk to my guy at Edward Jones, I'm not necessarily getting this kind of, lay of the land. You know what I'm saying? Yes. Right. How does one go about we have you, right? You're a potential lifeline here.
Yes.
But and people are looking for these. Where do we start?
Okay. Well, it's becoming more and more advisors are getting into, say, socially responsible investing. Let me throw some numbers out there. It wasn't that long ago that maybe $1 out of $100 in the investable universe in stocks in the U.S. were screened for sustainable causes. Then when I got into it, it was maybe like 1 out of 10. 6 years ago, it was 1 out of 9. 4 years ago, it was 1 out of 6. They just published a number that, in other words, 20%, $1 out of $5 is screened. So there are advisors that know how to do this. Like anything else, if you don't ask, you won't find out. So it's a matter of asking around. I could give some resources, of course, on how to find those kinds of folks. One of the websites that I'll point out is ussif.org. It's ussif.org. that will talk about sustainable investing, talk about all the different mutual funds and how those mutual funds are screened, that type of thing.
Right. And I think that's where the question comes up for a lot of people, because it's, most of us are already invested in some kind of mutual fund, but we have no friggin' idea what's in there, right? It's constantly rotating and we don't know a lot.
Yes.
So finding out, like today it might be good. Are they going to swap it out with something that we don't like in a month from now?
Well, that's a very, very interesting point, and that was one of the problems that I had, I guess, when I got into it, and why I wrote my first book. Is what I found is paint a backdrop a little bit. You probably remember Citizens United court case.
Yes.
Okay, corporations are people. How
Right.
wonderful is that? What could go wrong, right? Uh, around that time, I was going to my first conference on sustainable investing, where there were fund managers from all the major funds. These are funds that literally manage $1 billion or so each. And I asked him, I said, do you screen hard for political accountability? Because there's information out there that there are some players that are almost nonpartisan companies. Some, they disclose what they do, so you know what you're getting. Others are very secretive. Only the CEO knows where the super PAC money is going, that type of thing. So there was information to rate these things. So I was asking the fund companies, like, which ones? Because I had clients that they were asking me, they were upset about Citizens United, and they said, how do I screen for companies that don't pay to play, too much? Because that was their worldview. So what I found is that it was just at the beginnings of becoming on the broader radar screen. So I invented a way myself to just put together these small little portfolios that would be screened for flavors like political accountability. Then a couple years later, fossil free, that type of thing. So the larger mutual funds, they now look at political accountability, and you can probably find where they search at. But the thing is, everybody has their own view of that.
Right, exactly.
So there are ways where you could own a fund that has a very good description, so you could be pretty safe. Or you could do what a lot of my clients do, is they just own the individual stocks outright through either baskets, or if they have a large enough portfolio, they'll just say, you know what, I'm going to buy 30 or 40 different companies and just stay with them because I like these companies. My advisors kind of screened them to make sure that these aren't basket case companies, that type of thing. So there are a lot of different ways to get where you want to be, and to do it reasonably inexpensively, which is the big surprise, because historically, one of the things that people would turn away from, if you go to your, say your typical retail broker advisor, they'll put you in a fund that might have a very high fee associated with it that might and rightfully turn you off. Right.
So I guess when we're talking high fees, because this is all subjective, right? Everybody will, one person, you give them a head of lettuce for $5 and they'll want to chop your head off. And the other person, you give them a head of lettuce and you charge $5 and they're thinking this is a bargain, right? Let's just say, I don't know, somebody a family not quite making six figures. Maybe in the collectively, let's say $80,000. And that's probably high for a lot of homes I know. But still, within reason, I think, for a lot of people. And they want to invest. Should they be looking more on the mutual fund side, or are there ways they can go into these individual funds?
Yeah, good question.
Or stocks.
For folks that just are starting out, I'll give you an example. I mean, I could picture a client just like you described. It might be their first toe in the water in the area of sustainable investing. Say they have a 401k at work that has choices that are defined. They can't really do much with that. But they open up a Roth IRA or an IRA and they have maybe $5,500 in there. Does it make sense to hire somebody like me to design a custom portfolio that exactly fits their worldview? Probably not. those clients, when they come to me or go to a traditional advisor that is a fee only advisor that is aware of this world, they might say, you know what, there's about 200-300 different mutual funds. Tell me a little bit about your worldview. And then they'll pair you up with a mutual fund that might have a fee of about 1%, which is about par for an actively managed fund. And for a $5,500 portfolio, that fee is not going to be damaging to your portfolio. It's fine. And you can get a very good fund, huge amount of convenience, and feel good about the companies that you own underneath, because they won't be the 7 deadly sins.
That's a very eloquent way of putting it. So it is attainable. There is a way to do that. And would you ever suggest that someone maybe pull their money out of their 401k to invest in these types of funds? If, the 401k, they're just not really thrilled, or, it kind of makes them almost ashamed to be part of that?
While we're on the subject of 401ks, let me kind of tell you a suggestion that I would recommend is 401k providers usually have to rebid their contract with the company every so many years. And a lot of folks, I know from experience, that people come to me all the time saying, oh, they changed the choices again in my 401k. If a handful of people ask for a sustainable fund in their 401k, chances are next time they go out to bid for the service provider, HR will probably try to put a sustainable fund in your mix, because they want to be a fiduciary. They want to help you be a good saver. So more and more funds, more and more companies are adding sustainable funds. If for instance, a lot of teachers use TIA-CREF, there's a real good sustainable fund available to them that may fit their worldview. So that's one way of doing it. But another way of doing it is, for some investors, is to invest in their 401k to the match, so they're not giving money away or losing anything, and then take their other money and put it into sustainable funds, so they can at least do as much good as possible.
Right. Now, after we didn't really have a crash. Let's call it an economic turn down, right, of the 2000. For the longest time, I just saw my numbers going down, and it scared the bejesus out of me. I didn't want to. Yes. I didn't want to invest anymore, and my financial planner is saying you must consistently put in money, and I'm like, yeah, but I keep putting in the money, and my number is going down. What's the prognosis? How much is that turned around? I mean, I guess I saw a tiny bit of replenishment over the last 4 years, let's say. Nothing tremendous though. I'm lucky if I'm at a wash right now from where I was at 2000. And, it's been very hard for me to put that faith into investing. So, I guess, and then on top of it, we're going to add this layer of social responsibility. Are these SRIs, are they in any way outperforming or on par or worse than the conventional funds?
Yeah. Okay. Those are very classical questions in this area. Morningstar is a very big organization that publishes a lot of research on funds and stuff like that, for retail investors, for advisors, that type of thing. Paper after paper and other research has shown that there's no negative premium for doing sustainable investing.
Okay.
It's a wash pretty much. If you're going to do passive sustainable investing at low cost, you're pretty much going to compete very favorably with passive traditional investing. If you do active sustainable investing, you're probably going to compete very favorably with active traditional investing. There is a difference though. If you're investing in a sustainable mix and you're really kind of understanding that these are companies that you like, chances are, studies have shown that you're not likely to panic out in a downturn. The 2000 was a classic. That was one of the biggest downturns. People often just remember 2008 as being a big hit, but 2000 was even a bigger ride down.
I know. I remember that.
That, if you look
Took money out of my pocket. Dang.
There's a real good index done by Professor Schiller, the guy that he won the Nobel Prize a couple years ago in economics. He does an analysis that shows that when you look at stocks as far as their valuations, they were at an all-time high in 2000, and they did this huge roller coaster down. Then they recovered in 2006, 7 during the housing bubble.
Mm-hmm.
Just to be knocked down again in 2008. So we had 2000, 2008, and a lot of folks were thinking, well, let's see, 8 plus 8 is 16.
Right.
That 2016 we should have experienced another 8-year flood, and we didn't. Instead, we have a rally in banking and energy stocks and other sectors. So the market's at a very pricey point right now.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, nobody has a crystal ball, as far as when one should get in and one should get out. So really, successful investing is to me. There's 2 or 3 things to keep in mind. One is to make sure that your investments are matched for your horizon. So if your retirement account is truly for funds that aren't going to be touched for 20, 30 years, you could take a pretty long view and probably be much better off, but still not be 100% in stocks by any means. Have a balanced portfolio. But the thing that I think might have hurt you is if you're using a traditional broker and you're not paying attention to the fees, you could be buying loaded funds with like a 5% commission up front. In other words, they subtract 5% as soon as you buy the fund. So you have basically you're starting 5 yards back.
Right.
On the 100-meter dash.
Yeah.
And so you have to make that up. And then just the fees themselves. You said, well, fees are relative. In my book, I define low fee as 0.5%, both the management fees and the financial planning. Anything higher than that is considered a higher fee in my book.
Mm-hmm.
Now, sometimes it's okay to pay high, if you're so inclined. But we can talk about how fees are more damaging than the average person looks at if you want to go down that.
Yeah, I do want to go there. But before we get there, I just want to get your definition for the passive versus active funds.
Okay. A passive fund is, everybody hears on the radio, S&P 500 is up 1% or it's down 1%. That's an index that's defined about 500 stocks based on size, and it's the benchmark that most folks would measure their performance against. If you just buy the benchmark, you could, ever since Jack Bogle started Vanguard in the 70s, people have been able to buy the whole dartboard of stocks. In other words, I own Pepsi and Coke.
Right.
I own Monsanto, I own Apple and Facebook, that type of thing. So that would be buying the whole index. And that's the benchmark. So that's considered passive investing when you just say, you know what, I really don't care what I own. I just want to make sure my neighbor doesn't do better than me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to do worse, that type of thing. So if you own the benchmark, you're going to get the same as 30% of investors are just going to be owning the benchmark, so you're going to meet that level. Active is when you have somebody saying, I think Coke is going to do better than Pepsi this year, so I'm going to swap those. We're only going to own one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's active, and it costs more, to pay somebody to make those decisions and to throw the darts and stuff like that.
Right. So it's a little bit more like betting on a horse than betting on all the horses.
or the analogy I like is, I'm not sure how much, I'm not a big horse gambler, but I remember my parents' generation is win, place, and show. When you're actively managing investing, you're really trying to win. You're trying to get the big dollars. If you're doing passive investing, you're buying a ticket to get your horse in the top three. It's kind of like going to the Kentucky Derby, taking the horse that's the favorite and bet that it's going to come in either in third place, second place, or first place. It's not going to pay as much, maybe. You're not going to get as big a prize, but you're not going to lose money either.
Right. It wouldn't be as much of a loss if there is a hit. Okay.
Right.
Okay. So it's definitely active being more participatory and more like have your antennae out for the signals that might make you change your mind or invest elsewhere. Mm-hmm. Okay. So then, I do want to get into the fees. So when in your book, you talk about the different fee scales, and I really like you kind of use a car analogy, right? Can you run through, just kind of the basics of how these work?
Yes. Well, I thank you for reading the book, because to have gotten to the car analogy, you got more than the first couple pages. So thank you for that.
No problem.
Let's use the car analogy. Is kind of like you have a car, you keep it in the garage. If you're paying an active manager with commissions, it's kind of like you're calling a cab every place because you just don't feel like going in the cold car. You just want to hop in a cab, and you have a car, but you're going to pay a cab. You're going to pay a X amount of dollars to step in, plus so much cents a mile. And that's using a commission-based place like an Edward Jones and places like that. Those are the typical Ameriprise and what have you. If you're doing a fee-only advisor that charges a percentage, that's more like using a limousine service, where you still keep the car in the garage, but you sit in the back, you read the newspaper, chat with your friends, and you take the limo. Well, you're paying a pretty good price for that, but you didn't pay a special fee just to walk in. You're basically paying a static fee. You're getting pretty nice service though. Mm-hmm. If you're using an hourly fee-only advisor, then it's kind of like you're driving your car, but you have a CFP install a GPS in the car and kind of update the software about once a year. So you still have to drive the car, but you have to hold the wheel and follow the GPS. So if the person says, buy this investment, you turn the wheel and you buy that, and you do a little bit more hands-on. Mm-hmm. But it's not like most of my clients that do the hourly fee-only model, they do this once a year. It's not like they don't have to day trade or watch the stock market or anything like that. It's a once a year event where they do a little bit of adjustments in their portfolio.
Okay. So I'm actually thinking of this in terms of business, right? Because you can hire someone as an employee, which I guess is the limousine.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then you can also hire someone per task.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And then there's the kind of hourly, just update me when I need to jump in.
Right. It's just using it like an hourly planner would be somebody like I've got to get my lawn done, so the person's just coming out and doing my lawn.
Right.
They're not charging me to walk on it. They're just getting the job done, that type of thing. But let me use a number.
Okay, go on.
There's another way that I think is more instructive on fees. This is particularly for a lot of yourself and your younger clients, it's kind of hard to picture the day you're going to be retired and living off your nest egg. But picture that day. One of the rules of thumb in the financial services world is the 4% rule. In other words, say you accumulate $1 million worth of money in an account. The 4% rule says that you can take 40,000 or 4% of that away each year and not run out of money.
Okay.
You could look at it, say, well, $100 million divided by 25, I'm going to live maybe 25 years, inflation, canceling out investment growth, that type of thing. Very approximate, 4% rule. So people always like to know, how much do I have to save? So say if you save $1 million, you got $40,000 a year before taxes in today's dollars. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's 4%. Now, if somebody charges 2% per year as a fee, and they're your investment advisor, and you're living off 4%, what does that tell you?
So I think this is the other question that I had because that 2% is not 2% of the 4%. It's 2% of the million. Is that correct?
No, it's too, yeah, well, it's exactly, it's basically, there's a couple ways of looking at it, but it's if you take it's not 2% of the 4%, it's you're living off 4%. You're splitting every dollar you have with your advisor. In other words,
Right.
50%. You're paying a fee of 50%. That 2% is really 50%, or if you're paying 1%, you're really paying a 25% fee. Now, most folks, I mean, I was a scientist in my first career. Most scientists, I mean, they got math minors and stuff like this, and they get fooled by that all the time. They figure, well, I tip 18, 20% to my waitress. Paying my
Right.
advisor 1 or 2% is nothing. The person's a generous soul. They're not charging me 18%. Just say, no, you're multiplying the wrong numbers.
Right, right. And that's like one of those, I hate to say it, but deceptive.
Yeah, it's a little deceiving, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do we protect ourselves? So is you were saying 0.5%? Is that what we should be looking at?
0.5% is a pretty good number because if you can get financial planning and investment stuff done for under that, if you have your $1 million portfolio, that's not $40,000 anymore. That's $5,000,
Right.
and that you're getting financial planning plus you're getting the investment fees done. Now, here's the reality: a lot of index funds have fees of 0.1% or even less. Nowadays you can get very, very low fees.
Mm-hmm.
And the good news is there are sustainable funds that are getting down to that 0.2, 0.3, 0.4% level.
Mm.
For some investors, it's, the reason why I wrote my books is some folks don't want to pay any fees hardly. Is you could, if you own a stock in a brokerage, a low discount brokerage account,
Mm-hmm.
you don't pay any fees.
Right.
If you hold a bunch of stocks in say a very low cost brokerage account, they're waiting for you to do something before they make any money. They're not getting any love off of your account. Now there's certain ways they make money for you just being a customer to park a bunch of stock there. There's a whole bunch of technical ways where they make a little bit of money, but it's basically a very competitive industry when you are a very well-informed customer. You can find the very comparable goods, that are high-quality goods at discount prices.
And I'm assuming that's where you come in.
Yes, not just myself, but advisors like me.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of folks.
But this is you're passionate about it. So, and this is where you're suggesting that people should be aware of this option. Maybe
I think if you're going to do any kind of investing, you should be aware of the fee structure just to get a bigger bang for the buck. But then if you want to do socially responsible investing, there's two ways to look at it. There are some wonderful, wonderful sustainable investing funds that do charge 1% or 1.5%. But if you have the resources to say, this isn't going to hurt me financially, and I like the work they're doing, what they do with that 1% is they're not padding their nest necessarily. They're taking that money and they're meeting with the companies that they're investing in or not investing in, and they're browbeating them, and they're filing proxy votes. They're filing shareholder resolutions. They're making the world better for all of us. So there has to be some folks that to me it's analogous to public television.
Mm-hmm.
My wife and I contributed to public television for 30 years, if not 40. You don't have to do that, right?
Right,
You
right,
can
exactly.
still watch the show. So there's some folks, like our daughters they're at an age to where they can't send a check for $40 or $100 to public television, but they still may want to watch the news hour. So they get a pass. So same thing with sustainable investing. If you want to be a sustainable investor, but you don't have the resources to where you have to be a little more frugal, well, then you have to watch your fees. I would hate to lose you as a customer to the sustainable investing world and have you feel compelled to have to own the whole dartboard if that just made your stomach turn when you saw what was inside that dartboard.
Right. So then is there a certain maturity, let's say, of the company that we should be looking at when we consider these funds? If we see a startup in there and it sounds good, right? It sounds like something that we'd really be into. Is that wise to jump in right then? Or do we want to look at someone who's a little bit more seasoned that we really, know they're committed? Because something that's coming to mind right now is like Whole Foods. Every once in a while, there's this report that comes out about Whole Foods selling out to Monsanto. We've got the president of Whole Foods dropping like fake stock reports about competitors.
Right.
Do we want to wait and kind of know these companies before we decide, we want them in our portfolio?
Portfolios have different levels of what's called like risk budgeting. In other words, there's a certain part of the portfolio that's got to be pretty safe. There's a part that could take a little more risk. There's a part that could take a lot of risk. Depending on one's risk tolerance and risk capacity, there's some folks, I always ask my clients a very important question, on a scale of 1 to 100, 1 being the person that puts everything in the safety deposit box, 100 being the person that takes everything they own, sells it and goes to Vegas every 2 years and puts it on black or red. That's, where do you fit in? So a lot of it is very personal as far as how you personally can handle that degree of risk. The other thing is what your risk capacity is. There are folks that have living well within their means. They could take more risks than others. So what I usually recommend is for folks that aren't in a position to take a lot of risk is to stick with the very large companies that may not be the pure green plays, but aren't really horrible. They're not bad actors. They may have and use a lot of green energy themselves, have great mission statements, that type of thing. And if I'm not inclined to build a portfolio of individual stocks or have somebody help me with that, is to going to places like the ussif.org. The other place that I didn't mention before is Green America. Green America is a wonderful institution. They're not a financial institution. They're one of the oldest, green places for all kinds of things. You could, for instance, go there and possibly a lot of your listeners are interested in divesting from fossil fuels. They may not like the Dakota Access Pipeline or funding those kinds of companies.
Exactly.
Is you can go to Green America and look up fossil free investing. And there's going to be mutual funds. There's going to be exchange traded funds with lower expense ratios. There's going to be investment advisors, asset managers. There's going to be all those kinds of folks and institutions that you can pick from, for starters. Mm-hmm. And then you could look at, the different safety levels. And if you're working with a financial advisor, tell them this is the type of stuff that you're interested in, and insist that this is what you want, or take your business, elsewhere.
Right. Okay. So definitely do our due diligence, do our research on the types of companies that we want. Then we find, do you suggest a local person or, you have a website. Can somebody contact you directly and say, hey, Tom, this is, I did the research. I heard the podcast, did the research. Sure. Can you help me get started with this? And yes. What would you recommend for me based on the amount of money I'm willing to invest?
Yeah. Well, I'll put a couple plugs in. Is for myself personally, I'm a one-person shop. And since I've written a couple books, I've got usually about 10, 15 new clients a year, maybe 20, that are not in Illinois or Wisconsin. I'm registered in Illinois and Wisconsin, but other states, I can work with up to 5 people in a given 12-month period in folks that are out of state. There's some states that are so popular with the sustainable investing world that I'm maxed out. In other words, I can't take any more clients from California. There's a waiting list because it was easy to fill the 5. There are a few other states maybe with 3s and stuff like that. But I do work with many people from other states. I just have to keep track of that, and we usually do a Skype or a phone call, email, that type of thing. There's another way is I'm a member of an organization called the Garrett Planning Network, GARRETT, Planning Network. You can go to garrettplanningnetwork.com, put in your zip code, and find an hourly fee-only advisor in your neck of the woods. And many of them, unfortunately, do not do sustainable investing.
Okay.
But if you ask them and say, this is, I'd really like to work with somebody local. I'd like this hourly model because I want a GPS. I kind of like that thing. I don't want to pay a limo or a cab all the time because I do have a car, that kind of thing. They will often, quite frankly, will be able to find out their clients' needs pretty easily, translate those to me in like 2 minutes or less, and I'll be able to. I could give advisor to advisor advice, but I can't give advisor to individual advice without a contract and agreement and all that kind of stuff. But amongst advisors, we get to talk to each other all the time about how we might approach different situations. So there are people in the Garrett Planning Network that do. There's a handful that do sustainable investing, and some that could do it if you nudge them. Same thing with the National Association of Personal Financial Advisors, NAPA.org. There's about 1,300 CFPs in that organization. They're fee only, so they're not going to charge commissions and stuff like that. There's a fair number of those folks that will do sustainable investing.
Oh, okay. Okay, good to know. So then, because we're talking about the hourly fee versus the limo, obviously, I think we all know there's a trade, you trade dollars for hours, right? You're going to, or you swap them out.
Yes.
What, with the hourly fee, and obviously this is going to change according to the person, but what can somebody reasonably expect to invest time-wise, because with someone like me, you get, like you said, you get the 401k from work, and then, maybe you leave that job and you roll it over into something else. And you don't, like, as simply as you're explaining this, I need to read the book again and listen to this interview again to really grasp it. What type of, time investment and, to wrap your brain around it to the point that it's like, I can still, make sure I get the kids to school on time in the morning.
Yes. Yeah. And that's why, quite frankly, one of the reasons why the hourly model isn't as popular. I find it's about, using my calculations, it's about 10 times less expensive to use an hourly advisor than a wrap fee, of that type of thing. But it requires something that most of us don't have is a little extra carve out for that extra initiative. It's very easy to walk into a traditional mutual fund type of store or shop and say, what forms do I sign? Take my money, do a good job with it. I've got to get to the daycare, and run out, that type of thing. With the hourly, typical person, their business model is very much like me. Is folks will start the process, then they'll get sidetracked, and I'm not getting paid to be their parent,
Yeah, exactly.
So they'll drop the ball because very few will want to pay me to nag them. I do have a few folks that literally will say, "Please nag me," and I'll pay you for that.
I would be that person. So,
but most folks will say, "You know what? No, I get it. If I'm not going to take the initiative," and it's just taking the initiative of calling the meeting, filling out a few forms, and then when you get the prescription, take it to CVS or Walgreens and actually get it filled, that type of thing. So there's a little bit of hands-on, but there's probably 300 hourly advisors in the Garrett network alone. There's probably 1,000 more that aren't affiliated with the Garrett network. None of us have lost a client over the cliff yet. We're always able to get the person, to be exactly like they would have been in any other type of shop. And the typical situation for me is I'll have clients, once we have a relationship, they'll send me and say, "Hey, I want to do a review once a year. Here's all my stuff. Here's some copies of this. Here are my few extra pieces of information that I want to talk about or hear about." And they'll send me that, and I'll say, "Well, we've got you pretty simple situation. This isn't rocket science for me. It's going to be all of 1 to 2 hours of time charge. My particularly hourly rate is on the low side at $150 an hour."
Wow. Okay. That's
And
really reasonable.
so it'd be like $300 a year for a portfolio that could be as high as $2 million, quite frankly.
Wow.
Yeah. I did one just the other day, $2 million portfolio, $300, please. And otherwise, the person would have been spending $20,000 if they
Wow.
paid a 1% wrap fee.
Do you do taxes too?
I don't do taxes. I don't do taxes. I
'Cause-
don't do laundry. I won't cook for
Oh, okay.
my
Because
wife
right
gets
now
to
that
cook.
seems like a bargain.
Yeah,
That really
no,
is.
it is a bargain. Now here's the rub though. If you have $5,000
Mhm.
and say, "Boy, I really want to do something fancy here," and the first meeting might take a few hours, or
Right.
then it's like $450 for a $5,000 account. That makes no sense.
Right.
So sometimes there's no way to get there from here.
Hmm.
And you're almost better off in a situation where you do a little of your own research and you go to one of these websites and try to find a mutual fund that works for you, or try to find a traditional broker that will take you paid a commission on the SRI fund, the Sustainable Investing Fund. It would be money well spent, because there's that initial cost of getting started. It's very hard to because any investment advisor that's a fiduciary, that is their business model is to act in your best interest. They're not just sales folks. If they're a fiduciary like me, we have to make sure that we're not causing you any harm. So it's just like why you have to get on the scale when you go visit your doctor and get poked and prodded and stuff like that. It's not that they want to annoy you. It's just that they don't want to be guilty of malpractice.
Right.
So they have
Right.
to understand your needs. They have to really understand your goals. And initially, it sometimes takes more time than ideal. But for just portfolios, for relatively simple things, even the initial thing I've seen as low as several hours. But if we're looking at your whole financial life, for instance, it could be, to put it in proper perspective, it could be a little more time than that. But it's always most folks that do what I do, they provide an initial meeting that's no cost, no obligation, provide a fee estimate, and then for folks that want to go forward, that's the only time they get charged is after they've decided to go forward, and only for the time that's spent after they decide to go forward.
Right. Right. Okay. So you're saying, possibly some kind of free consultation, then to decide whether or not you want to continue with this person, whether you have similar worldview or they understand your worldview enough to help you choose the right investments. And then maybe, a 5-hour meeting or a 4-hour meeting, perhaps. And then maybe, what is it, once a year, twice a year? What's a recommended schedule to check in with you and sit down and evaluate and reframe if needed?
The typical check-in is once a year, but I just want to clarify on the initial. For folks that do what I do, the initial meeting is no cost, no obligation, but it's no advice, so it's
Right.
really not a consultation. If it's a salesperson, they're usually what's called they'll spill some candy in the lobby, to kind of, they'll give you some free advice, and because
But make it so complicated, you need them.
yeah, because they'll do like a lost leaders type of approach, whereas a hourly advisor it's just in how they're regulated. The average person would have no way of knowing, but only a relatively small fraction of folks are currently regulated to act in your best interest as fiduciaries. One of the rules in Washington that you're trying to overturn is a rule that would expand where more and more advisors have to act as fiduciaries, where they have to be more careful to act in your best interest, not sell you something that they know isn't the best, anything close to the best deal out there, that type of thing.
Well, let me see. So I'm not totally sure I'm understanding. So they're trying to overturn people being able to?
It is, the Department of Labor rule on the fiduciary standard is to have more advisors act in their client's best interest.
Oh, okay.
Most folks would be shocked to think, well, I thought all people have to act in your best interest if you're a customer. And that's not true. There's what's called a suitability standard. In other words, if I sell you a financial product and don't tell you that you're paying a 7% commission to me, the minute that you sign that form and that you're locked in that contract for 7 years, if you don't quite get that, I don't have an obligation to make you get that. I just have to make sure that I'm not just going to take your money and go to the Cayman Islands.
And that's how that is now.
That's how it is now. With the non-fiduciary standard, there are a lot of sales organizations that they will act in a way that is totally within the rules, but they don't have to tell you that this product may not be in your best interest, that you may be better off, say, staying in your 401k because it's got lower fees than what I can offer you. But if all I can offer you is what I have on the shelf, guess what? You're buying these
right amongst this. Right. So is this similar to what we saw with mortgages, where people were being coerced or, just kind of not disclosed fully what they were getting into?
Yeah. Did you happen to see the movie The Big Short by any chance?
I did not, and people keep saying I should see it. Yeah. It makes me nervous to see.
It does. You should see that. You would. Is what was happening is the industry was set up to where the people that were saying, you know what, Adrian, I think this house, you'd look really good in this house, and we could sign the papers. You don't need any money down. Let's have you move in tomorrow in this house, and you're going to say, well, my income's kind of shaky this year. This says, oh, don't worry about that. Well, that person that's talking you in, this is during the housing bubble, they were getting paid 2% commission on the price of the mortgage, whether you went bankrupt or not. It didn't matter. They had no responsibility to you as far as you were a good credit risk or this was a good deal for you. So they did not have to act in your best interest. They just wanted their 2%.
Right.
And that caused the housing bubble because it used to be in the old days, it was kind of like It's a Wonderful Life. The building on loan wouldn't, or Mr. Potter wouldn't give you the loan if they think you'd pay it back.
Right. Well, it's kind of like what we've seen in medicine as well, but that's, I digress. Where you used to be able to trust your doctor, right? He used to come to the house, give you a shot, whatever you needed, and he was like part of the family.
No, there's huge analogies there. Yes, there really is.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us and explaining this to us, because I think this is something that kind of nags at people, but nobody knows where to turn. And it's good to know that this is up and coming. or even beyond up and coming, but it might actually, become pretty mainstream, right?
Yeah, it is. It's the bigger banks and stuff like this. Folks that never thought of doing sustainable investing are sending their younger folks to conferences that people like me go to and stuff like that. So it is becoming more mainstream, and it's just you just have to ask. But the Green America website is a good place to start. Look at the fossil free resources. Look at USIF. Those are wonderful places that your listeners could go to.
Okay, great. And then, if he has space available for you, you can check out Tom's website, which is low-fee socially responsible investing.com. He's also got another website, which is quantumfinancialplanning.com. Thank you once again for being on the show, and best of luck to you.
Well, thank you for inviting me to be on the show. Much appreciated.
All right. Aloha.
Aloha.
The Nutrition Heretic podcast is a production of Savor the Journey, LLC. Our audio editor is Nicola Popovich. Our podcast manager is Crystal McLean, and our operations manager is Michelle Med. I'm your host, Adrian Hugh, the Nutrition Heretic. You can find us at the new and improved nutritionheretic.com, where you can download the Nutrition Heretic's free shit list of 7 health foods to avoid like the plague. You can also listen to previous episodes at nutritionheretic.com/podcast. Be sure to like us on social media for updates. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/nutritionheretic and on Twitter @NutriHeretic. Contact us with show ideas, questions, or if you want to be a guest. And don't forget to rate our podcast on iTunes and Stitcher.